Welcome, folks. Welcome, welcome. This is Edward Carson, and you are listening to Race Matters. And you're here at WJOP LP Newburyport, Joppa Radio 96.3. So just here to have a little conversations about race and race matters and how we think about that every week. If you just joined us, you were listening at the beginning to Kamasi Washington's Truth, and I like that song because there's a lot of reality and a lot of truth that needs to be discussed, and a lot of things we got to delve into within the notions of this country, and the fact that we're afraid to have conversations like the ones we try to have here. Again, and I've mentioned this before, I hope folks will reach out to me. Hope you'll send me an email if you have questions or you want to have a conversation with me about anything at Race Matters Podcasts at gmail.com. As we get ready to get started here, I want to go ahead and give a little promo for you. I'm excited to say that I'm going to be this year's William Lloyd Garrison Lecturer, and we know about that, brother, in a lot of ways. This year, the talk takes place in person. Masks are required for folks who are attending on December the 10th at Old South Presbyterian Church here in Newburyport, Massachusetts. And so I think that conversation is going to be great. As we think about that, one of the things that I'm going to do as the 2021 annual William Lloyd Garrison Lecturer is that I'm looking to explore 19th century American romanticism and realism and how it shaped the American narrative of racial capitalism and white supremacy. Through the ideals of personhood, religion, and growing rationalism, I will examine Garrison's radicalism and how he used his voice to ally with women and black people in their struggles. We will follow Garrison's maturation from being a white savior to an unfolding critique of him as an anti-racist crusader. I will discuss Garrison's relevancy here in the 21st century as we think about a lot of the serious and the critical things we got to talk about here in the 21st century. Voting rights, this fear, and I've done this in the last two shows about conversations about critical race matters. And what does critical race, or better yet, critical race theory, and what does that mean? And of course, black political thought. My lecture will synthesize Garrison's ideas about the perils of white supremacy and how we must organize and unify and dismantle that. Yeah, I hope you'll come hear how Garrison's Gospels gave voice to 20th century black leaders and organizations such as W.E.B. Du Bois, Mary Church Terrell, that brother Martin Luther King Jr., and of course the NAACP, as they operated in their struggle to liberate black Americans from the chains of 19th century provincialism that has encapsulated not only black folks, not only brown folks, but white folks, Asian folks, all folks through this. The Gospel According to William Lloyd Garrison and the American Truth is the title of my lecture, and it's going to challenge the greater Newburyport community to learn a little bit more about that brother William Lloyd Garrison, but it's also going to challenge us to think about the ways we can dismantle the remaining vestiges of white supremacy and what that poses in so many ways. So that's what we're here to do. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your attention to that lecture. Again, that's going to take place on December the 10th. You know, folks, I got to tell you, I'm pretty excited to be up in the studio today because I got a special guest and someone who is going to bring the funk. You're right. There's good funk, there's bad funk, and there's just funk. And there's a lot of ways we have to wrestle with that, particularly because we're here to talk about race. We're here to talk about the problems of race, and we're here to engage in ways in which we can all grow and we can all learn. And I'm going to tell you, I'm growing and I'm learning every single day and every single week. And speaking of growing and learning, you know, this black sister that I got up here in the studio today has really been instrumental to me in my own growth. My own learning, my own sense of trajectory. I mean, at the end of the day, I say this absolutely literally. She is the reason why I'm up here today and we're having this conversation. So I'm going to bring this sister into the fold and have her introduce herself. So I'm going to start off by introducing y'all to Deloria Carson. Y'all are going to know her by Deloria Carson. I simply know this sister by the name of Mom. I got Mom here. How you doing, Mom?
I'm fine, and I'm happy to be here as Deloria and Diane and your mom.
And Mom. You know, you made this trip up here for the holidays, and you've already stated that the weather's a little chilly as you've done it.
Is.
Yeah. So how are you feeling about the weather that most people up here would say is this is kind of nice this time of the year?
It is cold. When I left Alabama, it was 74 degrees. So you can imagine this is cold.
You know, it's interesting, and I've shared this with you before too. I've acclimated in different ways. I've acclimated to this New England environment, to the cold weather. I mean, I'm the brother who can sit outside and just kind of chill, even when it's 45, 50 degrees, because for me, I think that's warm, and I know what's coming in January and February too.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah, I can imagine what's coming in January and February, and I will not be here during those times.
Oh, so you think. You know, folks, I got my mother up here because, you know, this is a sister who was, you know, born and raised in the deep south of Alabama, and who's experienced some of those vestiges that I talked about in terms of what I'm going to talk about in my lecture on Garrison. And it's easy for me as an academic, as an activist, as an intellectual, as a thinker, to pontificate, to organize, to do the things to address what I've called on this show the problem of the 21st century, which was the same problem of the 20th century, and that is the color line. But yet my lived experience has been, you know, in many ways different from my mother's experience, different from a lot of other black folks' experiences too, growing up in a particular age, but also folks who also can speak to how society has changed over a period of time and what does that change look like. So I'm going to start off. I just got to ask you this question here real quick. You know, tell us, you know, what was it like being a black woman, being a black person, right? Growing up in the deep south of Alabama, and kind of, if you would, just kind of tell us, you know, where were you living? What was that experience like being a black person in the deep south?
Well, for sure, being a black person in the deep south, everything back in the days that I was living in, and I am an older person, much older, 70 years old. So, you know, I was back there in the day when the South was really segregated. We went to different schools. We had to ride different school buses. We had to go to different areas of doctor's office just to be black, white area. And we also went to the schools. The schools were segregated. You know, it seemed as if the white schools were very nice, very comfortable, and the black schools were just, you know, something that they put together for the black people to go. So, I mean, I could tell you everything about the segregated South because I really lived through it.
Tell us a little bit about that. And particularly, you know, you shared a story with me about being on a school bus where the bottom of the bus was practically, you know, literally falling apart from under your feet. So help us learn a little bit more about this, your segregated experience in the Deep South.
Well, when I was going to school and where we lived at, we had to take a school bus to school. So I would watch the white kids to come by, and they had their nice buses. I mean, brand new buses. And I would be picked up in a bus that was so old that when we were going to school, we could actually see the streets because there were holes in the floors of the bus. So, I mean, you know, we would just pray every day that we could just make it to school. And we would have to go to segregated schools where we were not equal in the books. The books for black kids were old, worn, and of course, you know, the white kids got the better books. So we learned out of just, you know, pages missing, whatever little raggedy books we could go to or whatever we could get. And we had to go to different areas of the town to eat. Like if we had to go to downtown areas, it was like you had to sit in an area that was black only and an area that was white only. And if you venture to the other part, you would pay the price. And as a little kid, when I first started out, I didn't know anything about segregation as it is. But as I grew older, then I realized, wait a minute, there's a set of rules for blacks and then there's a set of rules for whites. And I was living in a time that when the black people, we were not respected. I mean, we went to our own segregated churches and schools, and we felt like we were missing out on something. But at my age, I didn't know what it was that I was missing out on. I know it was segregation, but I was too young to understand what was going on.
I mean, that's interesting because at what point, for someone like me, what I know about segregation in the past and a lot of the things that I talk about on this show, those are things that I've not lived. Right?
Right.
Those are all textbook things. At what point in life for you did you become aware that you were living in this thing called Jim Crow segregation and really start to understand what Jim Crow segregation was about? And that's beyond just, living it, because you lived it. That was
Right.
normal for you.
It was normal for me. I think I got to understand what was going on around me more when I was an adolescent. As I grew old, when we were kids, we were just told things and we just went along with it. But as we got older and we ventured into junior high and high school, and then we learned, there's something wrong with this situation. We're going to a segregated school, and we're being told each day that we can't get this book or we can't get that book because it's not given to us. We're just not, on that list. And I realized that I could see people that are going to different places, like different restaurants or different bus stations or anything, and everything was colored or white. And I lived during that age where I had to respect, if you were colored, you had to drink out of this fountain. And if you were colored, you had to go to the back of everything that was to go to. You were never allowed to sit in the front of anything. You were also allowed only to be in the back of buses. When I used to travel from Linden, which is a small town in Alabama, to Selma, there were signs that said white and black. You had to sit in the back of the bus, which was black. And as I got older, I realized there's something wrong with this picture. There is something wrong, and that someone has to start to change it. And during this time is when a lot of the marching came about, and the segregation of different areas like restaurants and other places that had white only and black only. We started just integrating those areas, going there, knowing that we were not allowed to go there, but we went.
Did you, for me, because it's easy for me to talk a lot of junk, in my head, I'm like, there is no way in the world during that time period, if someone told me that I couldn't go to a place because they viewed me as this colored person, and this was for whites only, in my radical imagination, I think I'm just going to march right on in and I'm going to sit down, I'm going to do whatever I want to do. Did you ever think about that? Or was the fear so real that there's no way you would even think to do that?
For some reason, I don't know why, but I think just being myself, and I never believed in white only and black only, and I don't know why. But when I was coming up, if they said I couldn't go there, believe me, I went there. If they said I couldn't go to a white restaurant and sit down, I went there.
Yes.
We would call all kinds of coons and names. I think they even spitting out food and everything. But, I don't know what it was, but deep down in my soul, I knew that there had to be a change, and it had to start somewhere. And during my time as an adolescent, I think that's the time that we started to say, no more. We're not going to be segregated. It's time for a change.
I love that, and that's so true. And that's, again, it's easy for me to sit up here and talk about, what I would have done at a time that I didn't exist, and I do that quite often, as you know very,
Yes,
very well.
I do know.
You do know. What in school, when you were in elementary, junior high, middle school, high school, and I know the answer to this, I think I do. Did you ever have a white teacher?
We never had a white teacher. We never had a white teacher. All our teachers were black, and the principals was black. I think the only thing that we had white in that area would be like the school superintendents. That was over the area. And we never saw the school superintendent, so I'm just assuming he was white.
Probably, most likely.
Yeah, but no, we only had black teachers when I was coming up.
Did that do anything to you in terms of how you saw yourself? One of the things we know is in the Brown v. Board of Education case in '54, and then with all deliberate speed by the Supreme Court in 1955, they deemed that segregation had a psychological impact on black people and how they felt about themselves in terms of being inferior people. We know that that's going to happen in 54 and 55, but segregation is not going to end for much longer. It's going to take well into the mid to the late 60s by the time you're ready to exit high school.
Right.
And then still things are not going to change. In Alabama, they're going to be fighting court cases well into the 1980s dealing with this issue. Did this idea that you being less than white people ever enter your mind?
I really will be truthful. I never thought of myself as being less than the white people. I mean, I think I was growing up at a time when it was a time for change. And I came along when it was time for a change. So I was tired of being, segregated and from the whites. And it was just all the kids that were in my school, we were ready to fight for what we believed that we're not going to take this anymore. And that was during the time that Martin Luther King was there. And I mean, we had so many people to come to, especially Montgomery and Selma, Alabama. And they instilled in us that you're just as good as the next person. And so, believe it or not, we probably could have been killed. We probably could have been beaten. But we got out there. We got out there, and we protested, and we wanted to be equal to everybody else.
I love
it started doing about that time that I was in high school.
We've talked about your brother before, John, my uncle. Tell folks a little bit about your brother.
My brother was he's about a year behind me, and he definitely did not believe in segregation. When they had the Selma to Montgomery march, he marched, and it's like 50 miles to march from Selma to Montgomery. He marched, the entire way. My brother was fat when he left Selma, and he was skinny when he got to Montgomery from marching all the way. And he said that, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to get so far and then turn around. He really believed in trying to stop segregation. He was one of those persons that, if they told me to do this, well, I'm going to do that. He was like that. And I think they said that back in those days, afros were real popular. They said, he had the biggest afro in Selma, but he marched all the way to Montgomery. They have something out now that's called a footprint. And all the people that marched back in those days, if you recognize them on a poster, or if you recognize the person who actually walked that far, they have a footprint now that they're giving to the family or the person who actually walked those 50 miles between Selma and Montgomery.
I love it. I love it. You know, I mean, really seeing real action taking place. And I know you talk a lot about my late uncle, your late brother, quite a bit, and the
Yes.
things that he did. You know, when we think about race in America and the issues of race matters, you know, this is hard to believe, but I am now in my 9th year living in the greater Boston area, living up here around Newburyport. 9th year living up here. I mean, that is just hard for me to even imagine that I've been here that long. And so I say that because folks look at places such as Montgomery, Alabama, you know, where I'm from, and they think, you know, black folks and white folks, they just want to kill each other. That racial animus that's there is just unbelievable. There's this tension that's unbelievable. What would you say to what I call northern white folks, particularly northern liberals who live up here, who will come to us and they'll say things like, you know, wow, aren't you afraid to live in Montgomery, Alabama? The racism, the racist stuff. How would you respond to someone, particularly white folks, right? Mm-hmm. Who would ask you that? How would you respond to white folks who would tell you or say something like that?
Well, I would tell them for one thing is that Montgomery has changed over the years. I mean, you know, the black and the whites, as much as we try to get along, we do get along a lot better than we did back in the days. I mean, if they disliked us for whatever reason, it's not being shown out publicly. You know, they go all out of their way to try to make the relationship right now between the blacks and the whites, they make it much better than what it is. If people think that we're just down there fighting each other every day, that's not true. You know, we have organizations, churches, and we try to get along with each other by having all these different organizations. And we now have our first black mayor of Montgomery, Alabama, and he's doing a lot to try to bring the people together. And as bad as Montgomery may have been way back when I was in high school, it's completely changed now. I mean, if you came to Montgomery right now, you would never know you were in the South. It's just the same way people are in the North, like Boston, New York. You know, we try to get along together. We try to have committees that we try to work together for the betterment of all the people in Montgomery.
But, you know, I gotta ask you this question. Mm-hmm. The reality, of course, though, is that there is this sense of racial, the sense of racial animus, the sense of racial hostility that enters folks' mind. For me, oftentimes I think about how Montgomery, Alabama, or the entire, you know, not Montgomery, but particularly Alabama in general. Right. Let's go Alabama in general. Okay. I think about Alabama. I think about a place that is not as progressive still as I would like for it to be. Right. A place that could do a little bit better in terms of working class, black and brown folks, queer folks, trans folks, gay folks. Mm-hmm. Is that just me, or is that just a reality?
No, it's really, it's a reality. Alabama, to me, and I would say it, and I know I say it all the time, Alabama seems to be a state that's far behind all the rest of the states in the South are. You see changes in Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, and the people in Alabama seem to want to keep Alabama back from whatever they could do to make things better for the people in Alabama. You know, as much and as hard as we work to try to get more people in the Senate and more people in Congress, we just can't seem to get over that hump. It seems like they use the same old people that they always use. The only time you see them is when they come up for re-election. So, you know, we need a change. We need a change in Alabama. I'm not going to ever say that, but we definitely do need a change as far as politicians and everything else go.
You know, we talked about, and we've spoken about this, you know, I know you're a black woman who votes.
Yes. Never miss.
Never miss. A black woman who votes. You know, I remember how closely you watched and supported the senatorial race and victory of that white brother, Doug Jones. And for folks listening, if you don't know who Doug Jones is, Doug Jones was the one of the senators in the state of Alabama. This brother was the one who took the KKK to court back in 1963 after the Klan bombed the 16th Street Birmingham Baptist Church, killing 4 young innocent black girls who just went to church that morning to worship and do their thing. You know, Doug Jones is a person that black folks love, but yet, you know, help me understand why folks in Alabama would take such an amazing human being like this and vote him out of office.
The first time Doug Jones ran, there was a problem against his successor, and he was not fit.
Jeff Sessions.
I didn't want to say his
No,
Jeff Sessions.
I'm gonna call him out. You're too kind. Jeff Sessions.
That's right. He had so many problems with women.
Jeff, and then there was the other guy too, who's escaping me. The one who was I'm drawing a blank. Who was engaged with an underage girl too. There's Jeff, then there's the other person. But keep going. Go ahead. I interrupted you.
And there was a lot of accusations against him. And I mean, he was accused also, you know, of sexual harassment and all this. And the people in Alabama, like, you know, they knew this. I mean, would you take a man like Doug Jones, who has had a perfect record, no problems, and you don't want him to, because he's a Democrat, and they don't want him to be the senator. But during that time, for some reason, we caught the white people off guard. We went and voted. We voted for Doug Jones. And you wouldn't believe how many black people came out to vote. I mean, we came out in droves. I mean, I had the flu. I was so sick. I remember telling my husband, you know what? Just drag me out of the bed, drag me in there, and let me vote for him, and then I'll come back home and get back into bed. And a lot of people did the same thing.
Yes.
And we voted him in. The white people said that they were so surprised because they didn't think that blacks would come out in groves and vote like that.
Well, and you know, I mean, a lot of people say this was a campaign orchestrated by black women in Alabama who were organized, mobilized, really understanding the things that need to happen there. And I was trying to blank the person's name I was trying to remember was Roy Moore.
Yes.
Roy Moore.
Roy Moore was the person that, he was supposed, he had been in government for a long time, and he was also a person that was accused of a lot of different things, from harassment, and you know, the people back then, they didn't want the 10 Commandments put in the courthouse, and he brought it in anyway. And he didn't deserve to be, you know, senator or anything. But, you know, when they got through with him, I mean, we sort of voted him out also. But it's hard to vote these people in because we go out as black women and we try to get people to vote. You know, we're on this campaign that we want to get everyone to vote so we can vote some of these people out that's been in government for years. We want to vote them out. And we want some other black people put in these places to see what could we do for Alabama.
Do you know, and I'm going to ask this question. For me, you know, I think that things tend to boil down to race. Was this about race? Was this the fact that so many black people supported someone like Doug Jones that became somewhat of a threat to what I'm going to call the white establishment in Alabama? Or am I wrong?
No, it is. If the white people in Alabama thought that we were going to vote for Doug Jones, then they would have gone all out to try to make sure that he didn't win, even though he deserved it. But, you know, I think he ran again, and of course he did not win because I guess by the time it was time for him to run again, they had support from the white people then saying that the blacks got him in the first time. Well, he's not going to get back in ever again. So they voted, and he did not win. They rather have a football player, a coach who had no politics in his blood or anything. They wanted to get him to run for the Senate against Doug Jones, and he won.
Tuberville. Yes.
Coach for Auburn. Yes, he did. This man did not deserve that position. But for the white people to have a person like Doug Jones who knew everything there was to know, and he was a great politician, they didn't want him. They would rather have someone that was a Republican that knew nothing about politics.
You know, I got to ask, you know, I'm not Charles Barkley or anything like that, but I don't know. What do you think, Mama, me coming back to the state of Alabama and running for office? Do you think people will vote for me? Don't lie. Tell the truth.
I don't think so.
You don't think people will vote for me?
Well, you know, I think people would have to get used to you. I think that, and then, you know, maybe over the years.
Over the years, but it's going to take them a little bit of time.
It's going to take a little bit of time.
A little bit of time.
Yeah.
But, you know.
And you're a good person.
Well,
but they just, some of the things that you talk about, a lot of people down there still behind the times.
Would struggle with that just a little bit and everything,
yes.
too.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever worry about me and the things I talk about and the things that I do? I'm a radical brother, and I'm out there. Yes, I do.
It worries me every day. You can talk to my sisters, my brother. I'm like, please, Lord, don't let anything happen to him. Please take care of him, because I know how you are. I know what you do. Mm-hmm. And I just pray every day that the Lord take care of you.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm in good shape. You know, I'm operating things. I don't know who's out there listening to this, but as you know, I don't fear white supremacy, and I can't, but it's real, and it controls a lot of things. And, you know, and if I don't do it, and if other folks don't do it, then it doesn't get done. And I know that's scary.
It is, because I don't want anything like Martin Luther King to happen. You know, I don't want people to just be out because they hate you for what you believe in, even though you're right, and they do something to hurt you. That's what I worry about.
You know, it's, you know, one of the things we try to do on a show like Race Matters is we try to open these conversations to really get people to open up not only their minds but their souls and their hearts. And to have someone like you on the show to engage us in a conversation is a huge honor in so many ways. I mean, to have my own mother on this show,
thank you.
it's just thought provoking and just in so many ways. You know, I mentioned earlier that I'm in my 9th year living up here in New England. What's been your view or your thoughts on New England? Just this area, the greater Boston area, your perceptions. Anything comes to mind? Well,
you know, I don't know very much about, you know, Boston or anything like that. But, you know, I've been here a couple of times before. They used to say that Boston was the segregated North.
Yeah. And that may be right in a lot of ways, too, unfortunately.
No, I have heard that, you know. But I think, I'm not going to say it's any better than Montgomery, but I guess we have a lot of black people in Montgomery, so it's a big difference between Boston and Montgomery, so.
I mean, that's fair, you know, and I told you, I can go days and days and days without seeing people who look like me.
Right.
And it's, you know, when I'm in downtown areas, particularly even here in Newburyport, I get a lot of attention from folks. You know, there's, you know, the good old folks who don't want to stare, but they get caught staring or they're curious about me. Right. You know, they approach me and they'll ask me a lot of very interesting questions. My favorite question is, you know, where are you from? Like, you know, I don't belong in this area in some ways. You know, speaking of seeing black folks, the one thing that I told you the other day when we were out at dinner, and I'm just going to give them a shout out, Daryl's Kitchen and Bar. down in Boston, in the Roxbury neighborhood down there. We walked into that restaurant, and the thing that I told you is, all right, look around. You're not going to see this many black folks again, right? Since you've been
That's
here
right.
and everything. Yep. What was your experience being in a black-owned restaurant like Daryl's the other day and listening to the music, the food, the conversation? Share with folks, what did that feel like?
Well, I felt at home, for one thing. There were a lot of black people there. And then on top of that, they had a black band that played my kind of music, jazz and R&B back in the day. And on top of that, the food was great. It really was a nice restaurant. They had food there I had never seen before, which made it even better. But it was a nice place to be at, and I felt comfortable being in there,
Yes.
and I enjoyed it.
It's interesting. I got to go ahead and I'm going to call you out on this, because I was telling a colleague of mine today when I was in a meeting, I was like, my mother broke my heart the other day, and she turned to me and she said, well, how is that the case? She sat there and she told me, Edward, I'm not really a big Prince fan.
Oh,
And
I know you didn't bring that up.
I had to break it. I'm still struggling with that just a little bit, because I know you get deep into the soul, into the funk, into all the music and everything.
I do not know why, but I think I always considered Prince as being just a little bit too, I'm not flamboyant. I was just telling him, I said, the way he kissed, everything was just so fancy with Prince, but I did tell you that I like Nikki.
Yep, the song Nikki, and that's true, and that is fair. Yeah, so we're here for the holidays. The Thanksgiving holidays are taking place and everything. What has Thanksgiving been like in our household, in your mother's household, with your sisters, my aunts, my uncles? What was that like over the years?
Well, I'll tell you, Thanksgiving at our house was always nice. I can never say the family got together, and we never really wanted for anything. We had the turkey, the dressing, like people don't understand up here, but turkey and dressing.
or collard greens.
We have collard greens and potato salad, mac and cheese, sweet potatoes, potato pies, cakes. I mean, we had the works. And that was a time that we all got together, and we really enjoyed that time together. We had sisters that were supposed to do this, and sisters were supposed to be doing this. We all got together, and we made Thanksgiving work. And it was a great time of the year for us.
What was the dish you would do?
I was stuck into making the turkey, the dressing, the collard greens, the turnip greens. They couldn't even have dinner until I got there.
Oh, no, I remember
so,
that.
yeah, if I was late, they would be calling me saying, "Where's dinner?"
It's interesting. One of my I have a lot of memories of Thanksgiving, and I remember we used to go to the Turkey Day Classic football game between Alabama State
and Tuskegee.
And Tuskegee, two historically black colleges and universities. They don't play anymore, do they?
No, they don't. They don't. It seemed as though they were in different leagues. Tuskegee wanted to be, and Alabama State were in two different leagues. So in order for Tuskegee to win a championship, they would have to stay into the league that they were in, and they couldn't do that just playing Alabama State. So they decided to part ways. So and that used to be the best time of the year, was the Tuskegee and the Alabama State football game. We would also have a concert before the football game. They had a Turkey Day Classic, which we had the parades. It was just really nice, but it's not that way anymore.
As we get ready to bring this episode to an end, and I'm super grateful and thankful that you're able to join me on this show. I've got to ask you, I have two philosophical questions. Folks who listen to this show, my students, colleagues, I'm not an optimistic person. I'm not. I'm a black man in America, so I'm not optimistic. But I am hopeful. I am hopeful. I get up and I'm hopeful. I try to live every day in a moment, right? In terms of being hopeful. Question for you. What would you like to see when it comes to race moving forward? If you could have your wish or anything, what's the one thing you would like to see?
So one thing I would like to see is as race, and I know people, it's for us all to get along together. Mm-hmm. And I know there are people that are saying, well, we're trying to get along together. But I have to say, since our last president, it seems as though the country is just falling further and further apart. And it hurts me. And that's how Alabama is divided by our last president. And race has a lot to do with that, because they believe in him. Mm-hmm. And that's the sad part about it. We were actually doing better before then, but now it seems as though we're moving, instead of moving together, we're moving apart.
So, and I've got to ask you this question here. In 2008, a black man was elected as president to the White House, Barack Obama.
Right.
What did that mean to you? How did that feel, seeing an African-American man elected by black and white and Asian and all folks, a lot of folks, popularly elected to the White House? What did that mean to you?
It's the greatest feeling I ever had, because I never thought that day would come. And I'll be honest, I never thought in my lifetime that I would actually see a black man become the president of the United States. I never thought that would happen.
It may
never.
It may not be too late for me.
And I hope it don't be too late for me. So you need to hurry up.
Oh, well, I mean, you've already said folks in Alabama may not be quick and ready to vote for me, but I'm going to have to give them something to chew on and everything. And that's one of the things that I love doing. I do work to transcend race. Right? We have this conversation. We're speaking honest and candidly. We're being frank about a lot of things, because we want white folks particularly to hear what we have to share, what you have to share, which is much more than what I have to share. Mm-hmm. But we also want to really allow folks to start thinking about race in different ways and have different kind of conversations too. Mm-hmm. So, Diane?
Yes.
I'm going to give you the final word for this show as we bring it to a close. Anything on your mind you like to share with folks?
Yeah. I mean, I'm the type of person that I like to see everyone get along together, really. I wish that more than anything. And I hate to see anything that come up that pulls us apart, because it seemed at one time we were getting so close, but now it seems like we're getting so far apart. It's got to change.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Folks, we're going to bring this show to an end. I'm super excited to have a person I call Mom in the flesh up here to celebrate the holidays, and in studio to have this conversation with me. This has been a treat in so many ways. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
You bet.